Stanley, Scuba, Sailing, and Adventures. Scuba diving, the Turks and Caicos. Dive site, driveway. The driveway dive site is located off West Caicos Island, just south of the Yankee Town ruins. The dive site ranges in depth from 50 to about 110 feet. As soon as we hit the water, before I could even get my camera on, we had sharks making very close passes. If you saw the last video, Dive 1 on this particular dive site, then you know that we had sharks working the schools of fish underneath the dive boat. By the end of this dive, I would literally be nose to nose with a shark. I hope you'll keep watching until the end of the dive. Other than that, the dive started normally, and after we entered the water, we headed toward the edge of the reef, the wall, through the big sandy chute that this dive site's named after. As I mentioned, this was the second dive on this dive site, and it was the third day of diving, dive number 11 in total. The dive started at about 10:30 and lasted just about 54 minutes. I recorded an average depth of 44 feet and a maximum depth of 71 feet. The water averaged a comfortable 82 degrees Fahrenheit. Here we are face to face with a spotted scorpion fish. Can you see his eyes and mouth? The spotted scorpion fish is venomous. They range in size from 7 to 14 inches and sometimes reach a maximum of 18 inches. They're usually found in depths of water ranging from 5 to 50 feet. This is probably the closest I've ever come to one, and he didn't react at all. Sometimes they'll raise their spines or move their fins, but this one didn't move at all. The forward spines of their dorsal fin are hollow, and that's what they use to inject the venom. It was late morning now, and the sun was high in the sky. It was a perfectly sunny day here in the Turks and Caicos. The visibility was well over 100 feet. I found several clusters of lobsters here on the wall. Here you can see there are 3, and I'm trying to get positioned to get a good photograph. Underwater photography, just like photography above the water, is really dependent on light. So it seems there's always not enough light or too much light. I'd rather have too much light than not enough, honestly. I was still really battling congestion at this point and becoming extremely concerned about how many more days and how many more dives I'd be able to get in on this trip. In the meantime, trying to completely enjoy each dive, as it might be the last one on this trip. I had started on the Sudafed the day before the trip started, and I was also using ear beer after almost every dive. The shark activity wasn't limited to just beneath our dive boat, but there were plenty of sharks cruising along the wall. The sun was just brilliant. I love these views when the sun lights up the entire wall. There wasn't a single cloud in the sky. As I mentioned, this site is called the Driveway, also sometimes referred to as Yankee Town. It's referred to as Yankee Town because it's just south of the Yankee Town ruins on West Caicos. It's also most commonly referred to as the Driveway because of the wide sandy chute that cuts through the fringing reef and slopes downward from 50 feet at the top of the wall down to 110 feet. The sand chute actually forms an inverted Y as it drops, with a plateau isolated between the two branches. Here's another large barrel sponge. They seem to be very common along West Caicos. This one almost looks like it has a little damage around the top. They're actually fairly brittle at the top, and I think sometimes divers will put a hand on them and not realize how easily they'll break. This barracuda made an extremely close pass, which made for some great photographs. If you're interested in the still images, check out Stanley Scuba Facebook page or Stanley Scuba on Instagram. This site is part of a marine sanctuary, so there's no fishing of any kind. And that might explain why the fish don't seem to have any fear of divers. I don't think they allow spearfishing of any kind here, including lionfish, and that may explain why there were quite a few lionfish here as well. Here we have a school of Creole wrasse. I really enjoy being able to do 2 dives on the same site. I think you really don't get much flavor for a dive site in a single tank. There was no current to speak of here, so we really had our choice, and the first dive, we went down the sandy chute of the driveway and turned north, and then swam north along the wall until we reached about half tank. At that point, we went on top of the reef and then swam south back toward the dive boat on top. For the second dive, we did the opposite. We went down the sandy chute and then turned south and swam south along the wall until we reached about half tank. And then we came up here on top of the reef to work our way back toward the dive boat north of us. Here we have a spot fin burrfish, and they look very similar, in my opinion, to the porcupine fish. And I think I had been confusing them in the past, but for me, I think the spot fin burrfish is easier to tell because the porcupines don't completely go away. The fish isn't completely smooth when you look at it very closely. I know it was hard to tell in that shot, but if you have a different way to tell the spot fin burrfish and the porcupine fish apart, please let me know. I'm very curious. That's what I'm using for now until I hear or learn of something different. I ran into this fish again a few minutes later, and I'm trying to get a little closer. Here you can start to see those little porcupine spikes don't go all the way in. The body's not completely smooth. So again, I think that is the simplest way and hopefully the correct way to tell those two fish apart. So I came around the side here, was hoping to meet him face to face, but he turned and headed the other way. As you can see there was a shark off in the distance. Lots going on this dive site. Now that I have the sun behind me for a minute, you can really see how it lights up the reef and brings all those colors to life in the video. A lot of times things are just lost in the video. Like now it's starting to get washed out as I come around the other side. And then if you're too far away, the lights don't seem to light things up enough. Here I'm getting close to the boat. You can see the boat and the school of fish and that shark working the school. I was trying to get directly below the shark to get some photos against the sun. See the shark here? And then all of a sudden, without warning, in a matter of a second here, the shark makes a dive and comes right at me and rams my camera and then turns away. I was taking pictures the whole time, so I have the GoPro mounted on top of my camera, and I must have gotten 10 frames, and I didn't even realize that the shark was going to run into the camera. But the last frame, I couldn't pull the shutter because he was too close to focus. That was a first for me. I'd never experienced anything like that. The shark wasn't moving in through the school of fish anymore, but was circling the school very widely and very quickly. I was trying to not let the shark get behind me and to keep it in view. There were other sharks joining in. They were further out. But as I made my way up for the safety stop, we had at least 3 sharks. Again, here you can get a view. The sun is so bright, but you can see that school of fish. And you can see 2 of the sharks here, and then the third. Here one of the sharks heads toward me for a second, but then breaks off. At this point, I had reached about 700 psi in my tank, and I'd finished my safety stop. I decided it was probably time to shut the camera down and head back to the boat. What a unique, interesting, and exhilarating shark encounter. A first for me. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment.